Is it a possibility that the reason why you've got an addiction with cocaine because you have ADHD? Now, if you have ADHD, it's most likely that you are impulsive. So I'll summarize that in two parts and explain why. First off, something that I hear all too common is individuals that have been diagnosed to have ADHD, believing that the reason why they have a codependency with cocaine is because they've got a dopamine deficiency. So to begin with, let's explain what dopamine is. See, dopamine is responsible for the feeling of satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. But here's where it gets really interesting, because what if you didn't have a dopamine deficiency, but you were spiritually deficient? What does that mean? Well, if you rely on your sense of satisfaction and your sense of accomplishment on things that you've achieved and things that are outside of you, well, that's what it means to be spiritually deficient. Because do you love yourself? Are you proud of yourself? Do you admire yourself? Are you in love with yourself and your life? What does that mean? Well, in hindsight, do you value yourself and do you enjoy being you? Here comes the second part, ADHD. Now, what if ADHD was just a coping mechanism? I'll explain it like this. Now, if your upbringing was stressful, unpredictable, and somewhat traumatic, you were hardwired a certain way. See, growing up in your formative years, you couldn't fight back and you couldn't either run away. So what you do is just zone out. And ADHD literally is that sense of zoning out, dissociating from your feelings, dissociating from what you think. So if you were brought up in a chaotic or overwhelming environment where fight or flight mode is not an option, as a means to cope, you dissociate. So if you've been running on adrenaline for most of your life, your baseline state is numb or disconnected. What does that look like? Well, that looks like that void, that emptiness that we're always trying to fill. And that's where cocaine comes into play, because what it's doing is providing a false sense of security. And here's how it comes into full circle of being spiritually deficient, because if you're feeling with all surface level stuff, well, that's not maintainable. So what's the answer? Well, the answer quite literally is finding your meaning and purpose. But what is your meaning and purpose? Well, if you come to think about it, the most important relationship you will ever have is the one with your own self. And the biggest project you will ever work on is you. So you might as well make it a good one and give life your best shot, right? At the end of the day, if you're saying yes to drugs, what are you saying no to?